Oh, it's always fun. Always great to see you. There's, I keep saying this just about for every single interview. There's so much going on. Um, we're having a great acceleration of events, and it started in the autumn months of 2019 with the repo market, uh, the, the, the Treasury bond repurchase window. And that was my sign that things were all breaking. And then when they expanded the repo window to Wall Street hedge funds, I realized, oh my gosh, this is far bigger. So I did some checking, did some research, got some help, and came to understand that the repo market extended to the hedge funds because they were buying a third of all the treasuries. And they were doing so in a leveraged manner. I mean, like 50 to 1, 60 to 1, 80 to 1, even 100 to 1. Pardon me. So I thought errantly in the latter months of 2019 that we might have a rollout of a new dollar. But instead we had a jump shift. That's a bridge term, like the game of bridge, not poker, but bridge. They did a jump shift from the banker suit to the medical suit. It was a brilliant move. It was well planned. And we're seeing the outcome now with this pandemia and this vaccine. It did not turn out the way I was expecting in 2020, early months. But now I think certain things have run their course. I'm trying to be careful with my words. If you, things have run their course. The public is more aware of the risk factors. The public is now, how should I say, they're aware of the virus and its elements, and they're aware of the vaccine and its risks. And I'm happy to say that the momentum is working in the good direction, because I think after a few more months, the only people left who haven't awakened will be the slowest, the most gullible, the most ignorant, the most pathetic in our society. I had things pretty much figured out by March of 2020, late February. I get into arguments with a few people who told me I needed to keep an open mind. And I said, look, if I'm running a newsletter, I'm aware of a lot of different things that have been going on in the planning stage for years. This is a climax event. This is not a new event. It's a climax in a series of events. So I don't know where you want to launch off here, Holly. It's you got the floor. Where do you want to go?
Well, I am going to start. You had sent me a message yesterday. I had seen recently that there's like a pop-up ATM around here, and it's a Bank of America ATM. And last week it got boarded up. So I know someone in the family. I don't have money in Bank of America, but I've got a family member who does. And they were surprised to see that the local ATM is now completely gone. So want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, but that's an ATM. But how about a bank office? Do you know of any bank office for Bank of America nearby? Or
well, a lot of those closed during the lockdowns.
Okay, all right. So they were gone a while back, and now you're seeing their ATMs unavailable, boarded up. Well, BOA was on my watch list starting, I would say, in early March. I had something happen to me personally in February of a nasty nature. I have a lot of nasty things happen in my life, but I seem to overcome each one in sequence, wounded, but I come back. I had an event where I heard from a rather trusted source. He said, Jim, I know somebody who had it was close to a $40,000 certified check and Bank of America accepted it at the window and never deposited it in that person's account. And he said to me, something's going on with Bank of America. And we talked about a few different possibilities in our own special way, with a lot of speculation and raising a point. What do you think about that? Can we fortify this concept? Does this make any sense? Does that make any sense? And we thought that Trump might have been doing a good deal of interdictions in various passageways that might have interrupted Papa Bush's favorite bank, Bank of America. So I told him, I think we're going to see a derivative event. And I think rising interest rates are going to push it. It could be the rising oil price, but the petrodollar derivatives are important. Yeah, they're important, but not as important as the interest rate swap derivatives, the bond derivatives. I said the price of oil is important, but we've been having a phase out. I told him that the most important derivative now is the bond derivative, because we're seeing fast rising debt. Okay, we went from 20 to 23 trillion, 24 trillion very quickly. I think we went up even more quickly to 28 and 30 trillion. There are some reports from Judy Byington that the GSARA has kicked off, and one of their initial steps and procedures was to cancel and pay off the $30 trillion US government debt, to which I say, well, that sounds great, looking for more confirmation, but the other shoe in that pair is what happens to the continuing run up of debt. What'll happen to the next 6 months of debt if it's another 2 trillion or 4 trillion? So we don't have a lot of answers. But anyway, back to this guy and his source information. I told him to keep a watch, and he agreed fully. He said, Jim, I agree. Bank of America is probably the most vulnerable of the Wall Street banks, for the reason that you stated, that it's one of Papa Bush's favorite hobby horses. So I put in my April Hetrick letter, watch Bank of America, and I can't remember, but I think I put in the March Hetrick letter that if there any derivative event, any accident that happened from rising interest rates, my number one candidate would be Bank of America. And I expounded on that in a moderate way for the April report. I haven't started the May report, but yeah, I think Bank of America is in deep trouble. And let me share something else. I was talking, this is just a consult call. I tell you, these consults, I've done over 200 of them, Holly, in the last 2 years. So it's like 2 a week for 2 years. They stack up, but here's the benefit. I'm talking with clients and I'm talking with followers of my work. And these are smart people. These are people with influence and experience and contacts. And I heard a few days ago that there's a group called the Restored Republic, and they've been overseeing the bankruptcy of Bank of America. And I said, whoa, it has happened. He said, Jim, this has been going on for several weeks. I said, do you think it might have started like February and March? And he said, yeah, right around there. And I said, well, given it how it's so big, it's probably like 10 steps. And he said, yeah, that's beyond my understanding. But we've got a bankruptcy that's being handled behind the curtains. And I'll tell you why. If Bank of America went public, they would start a bank run. And it would result in shuttering all their ATMs and probably many of their bank branches. I've got some people close to me who have a six-figure account in Bank of America. And I warned him 3 years ago, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, Jim, they're big, they're safe. What don't you understand? And I said, well, I think it's more like, let me just ask a simple question. Do you know what a bank derivative is? Interest rate swap? He said, no. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, let's just drop it. I didn't want to enter the conversation with a blockhead, so I didn't. If they went public, they would undermine the entire US big bank facade, fortress. I had a couple clients respond to me in just the last 12 hours that if Bank of America doesn't get this under control, or if they don't fix it with significant patches to buy some time, then we're going to have other Wall Street banks that go into failure. Okay, there's a really important point, Holly. After the Lehman event, that's the name given it, but it was where JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs killed Lehman Brothers because those two banks each had more mortgage bond exposure. But, oh gosh, I lost my point. Oh yeah, lashing. After the Lehman Brothers incident, Wall Street realized that they could no longer have Morgan Stanley, their designated bank derivative manager. Morgan Stanley is the expert at these, at managing these derivatives. They got the experience, they got the knowledge, they got the background, they got the people. And Wall Street made a decision that they were going to spread it out and have Citibank, BOA, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, have them all share the derivative load. And what they did, to their disfortune, was they had less than capable people doing it. The Morgan Stanley people were the experts, and maybe they spread some of the Morgan Stanley experience around. I don't really know. I kind of doubt it, because if you're not from JP Morgan and a VP there, then you ain't going to enter the room with them. You don't borrow someone from another bank and have them join your select group that was so hard to enter. There's a joke about Goldman Sachs, and I'm just going to dance on the line here, that in order to have acceptance as a vice president of Goldman Sachs, you got to prove $1 million fraud on your resume. Let's just call that a joke. All right, so the lashing took place. Okay, here's the concept of old, like 200 years ago, ships at sea, hoist the sails, they're in a storm, and you got to have 4 or 5 guys go out there and lower the, raise the sails so that they don't get whipped around and tipped over. Well, there might be 4 or 5 guys out there. They tie themselves to the mast, they tie themselves to each other, and they tie themselves to the sidebars of the boat so they don't get knocked into the ocean and killed. It's called lashing. The concept has been borrowed as a name by the big banks. So after the Lehman incident, the big banks started to lash themselves together. So the lesson learned and the point to take away is if one of the big banks goes down, it's going to take down the others. And this is a really important point. If now we know that the Restored Republic is overseeing a Bank of America hidden bankruptcy procedure, let's watch Citibank. That's my other one on the list. Citibank, I believe, at one time they had the largest derivative exposure. I put in my March report, I put it in my April report, a graph on the derivative exposure. And the 5 biggest banks in the United States have something like a $230 trillion exposure. That's notional amount. So, divide just for simple math, napkin math, divide by 100 for their actual basis upon which they use leverage. Well, if they got 240 trillion in notional, they got, 100 to 1, it wouldn't be 230 billion, it'd be 2.4 trillion. $2.4 trillion is at risk, holding up 100 times larger structure. I did not know until this morning that BOA had New Hampshire-based, sorry, I'm giving away your location, New Hampshire. Is it New Hampshire or New Hampshire? I get confused. I think it's New Hampshire. So they got ATMs in New Hampshire that are shut down. I'm wondering about the rest of the Eastern Seaboard. How about in Boston? I don't know. Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if suddenly there's a big buzz on the social networks that BOA ATMs are shut down? Woo! Okay, we're not getting into really nasty conspiratorial concepts here. I'm trying to keep it pretty much straight, but got some indication that Bank of America is in bankruptcy, and people need to know so they can get their money out. And if that causes a bank run, then that's just a very unfortunate event for the bank. They're a very large bank. They have branches all across the country. They probably have 2,000 branches. These are gigantic branches. My personal contact is in Chicago. And he told me that they got dozens and dozens of branches in Chicago. I do wonder, Holly, if they're more involved with the casinos than they are with, say, business and construction loans, business development. There's not been a lot of business development in the last 2 years. During lockdown, you don't do much. But there is, like mortgage activity, there is room addition activity, car loans, and those are kind of standard things that banks never really exit. I hope that answers your question on Bank of America. I wish I knew more, but the takeaway is something's going on. Let's keep our eyes and ears alert. And when I sent that message out, I sent it to my buddy list, and you're on my buddy list, and there are about 35 people on it. So I'm getting a number of different responses, and many of them are kind of useful.
Well, I had seen a lot of them, like branches actually shut down. I was living in Michigan for a time, and that was during the lockdowns, and they had closed. They said it was because of the disease, and then they said they were closed because they couldn't find people to work there, which didn't make sense to me either. So I think you're right. As far as that goes, the writing seems to be on the wall for just a lot of banks in general. Like, things are very precarious here in the US right now, Jim, like as far as gas prices and food. And I'm seeing some empty shelves, even like the normies are starting to wonder what is going on here. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Like, how bad do you think things are going to get here in the US?
Oh, what a wide open question. You can narrow it down. Come on. How bad will things get here? What you mean in the supermarket?
As far as like, yeah, supermarkets, gas, before there's, like you said, there's hints of some sort of global financial reset. I mean, you've really, the things that you've said about this have really come to pass, which I think is so great about having you on my channel.
Yeah, I have never received so many compliments. This is me tooting my own horn, but it's really more like an echo. In the last 6 to 10 months, I've gotten more compliments than I have in the previous 5 years. Jim, you called this. Here it is. You described this, you described that, and they're happening. It's concepts like the phase out of the dollar, concepts like an explosion of debt, concepts like infinite QE. What I mean by that is a limitless amount of coverage of our debt with funny money. I could never convince a couple of family members that we're dealing with funny money. They say, what do you mean? It's backed by the US government. I said, yeah, but there's no backing of it within the US government. What is, if they print $1 trillion for stimulus or covering some banking event, what's behind that? And I kept hearing, it doesn't matter. I said, well, it matters if it gets too big, but it's not getting too big. I said, it will. I don't think so. Well, now it is. Okay. How bad will things get? I'll just keep my comments with respect to 3 areas: food, fuel, and supplies. I tell you, that's enough to cover half an hour, but let me do my best at a high level. I want to keep my notes straight: food, fuel, and supplies. Let me give you an overview. In the 70s and 80s, David Rockefeller made maybe 30 to 50 trips to China. And the stories are really quite prevalent that he sired 20 to 30 children. This is more than going out and having a few drinks and having some fun. I'll leave it to the listener to make conclusions, but I call it seeding. And at the same time, we had what we now call the offshore manufacturing movement, the offshore industry transition. And I remember it like yesterday. I was working at Digital Equipment Corp, and there was Intel chip fabrication plants that moved to the Pacific Rim. And 2 or 3 of us got in like my office, and we were looking at a Wall Street Journal article, and I said, look at this, they're closing down some California chip fab. They call them chip fab plants or chip fabs because it's such a commonly used term. This is part of my overview, Holly. I tell you, this is a gigantic topic. And I said, you know, if we continue in this vein with other companies following Intel to the Pacific Rim, it's going to be a lot more than just high tech. It's going to be more than chip fabs. It's going to be like PC manufacturing, like Lenovo, whatever it's called. And back then I was studying the justification, and there were 2. One was cheaper labor, and the other was reduced environmental strains and costs. And there was a big hubbub. There was a lot of controversy about whether, is it ethical for a company to go to the Pacific Rim where they will have emissions that are pollutants, but they're just not part of the national priority. So there's no fine, there's no equipment, there's no, what do you call it? I don't know what they call cleaning devices, filters, filtration systems, emission control. So it was cheaper for labor, and it was cheaper for environmental and pollution issues. And I thought, wow, that's going to get a lot of traction in the next 20 years, because everybody and his brother knows that the US is high on labor cost, big on benefits, workers' compensation, pension, medical coverage, health and dental. And you do that in Malaysia with a chip fab plant? Forget about it. Forget about it, as they say in New York. Forget it. Okay, anyway, here's my bottom line. Here's my conclusion. The West developed a Chinese dependence for the entire supply chain. And you know, we talk about food, fuel, and supplies, but one of the big unknown very little known component supply is Chinese pharmaceuticals. They're components. You know, when you're doing computer programming, you make modules so you can move a module and you don't have to reprogram something. Well, in the pharmaceutical industry, you've got components. They act a bit like modules. Okay, we've got an analgesic pain-killing module, and it's used for 80 different drugs for final product. We built a dependence with China for chips, for telephone, for Apple. What's the name of that company? Fox something?
Foxconn.
Foxconn. Very good. Thank you. I only had Fox in my little memory. Well, that's not so little, but we don't have China involved too much in the supply chain for fuel. You don't hear about, oh, there's a refinery on the Pacific Rim in China. No, there are other refineries. The refineries are all over the place. But the supply chain, I do marketing research every single week in this manner. There's a nice looking porcelain bowl. I'm not buying it. I'm checking it out. Turn it upside down, made in China, or hecho en China. Oh, there's a nice shirt. Look at that. It's even got some local markings on it. Let's look at the label. Made in Sri Lanka. Another one, made in China. Oh, look, there's some gym shorts. I might buy one of them because, you know, I come out of the shower. I like to, you know, dress light, especially in hot weather. Every single one is made in China. So we've got a supply chain dependence upon China. And it's a lot bigger than anyone who does a small amount of research realizes. I don't think it's involved much with the food chain. I think Ukraine is far more involved with the food chain. And let me just say that I've got it on pretty good authority that there is zero planting in Ukraine. It's not like they don't have the they don't have the fertilizer to get going or the seed. No, there's chaos. Chaos abounds. So they're in the top 5 for corn, in the top 5 for wheat, in the top 5 for soy, and they are number 1 for sunflower seeds. And my little joke, I said this 2 months ago. Don't expect Major League Baseball players to be spitting out sunflower seeds this season. I haven't seen any such activity. And I got to say, last night, even though I don't like the Yankees, I'm from Boston, that 3-run homer in the 9th inning at home by Aaron Judge, that just made me smile and made me realize why I love baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player. Anyway, okay. My overview is that Rockefeller created a dependence upon China. And look at all the different container vessels that are not offloading in California. It's not just California. It's the whole Pacific seaboard. It's Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. By the way, San Diego is not a big port. It's more like a Navy port. It's an Air Force at Miramar, and it's a naval port, including underwater ports. I'll leave that topic alone. China has been set up as part of our dependence in the supply chain. So if they're going to interrupt things, let me just put that in the passive voice. It's a little less accusatory. If the supply chain suffers more interruptions, if there are more events that disrupt, then it's far more likely to be harmful and with a powerful effect, given how the supply chain has been set up to be so dependent upon China. The supplies, I mean, golly, just housewares. There was an interesting controversy about 10 or 15 years ago that I noticed regarding hardware. Oh, look at that. You can get a cheaper bolt, like a machine bolt, like a stove bolt, like a bolt that has a square at the top and a round top, a square near the bolt part, and then a round top. Okay, they call it a machine bolt because it fits into a square slot and it doesn't move. There was a lot of controversy that the quality of hardware coming out of India was crappy, very crappy. So there were changes that were made, like at Home Depot, and a lot of hardware, Ace Hardware. There were a lot of changes that took place, I think, between the year 2000 and 2005. And it was to improve the quality by cutting out that foreign supply chain element out of India. Okay, so it's not been an easy transition to get dependent on other nations for the supply chain. But it's inescapable that we're more of a globalized, interdependent set of nations. I believe there's a good deal of sabotage going on. That's just my opinion of the supply chain. Okay, let's focus on food, because food is usually what is behind any, let's just say, historical element within societies where things get overturned. I like to avoid certain words. I've been saying now ever since about January, February, no, ever since about February and March, when Ukraine really took off and accelerated in its problem, that this entire planting season is ruined. We're just not going to get away with no damage or temporary fleeting problem. No, it's going to go all the way into the next planting season, which is March and April. We're not going to get out of this. And you could say we're not going to get out of this alive. I have now been on record, Holly, as saying that we're very likely soon to see big supermarkets and their chains fill up and not make it to the next fill up in 4 or 5, 6 days. They'll fill up, and then within 24 hours, they'll be not totally vacated, but a lot of empty shelves will be apparent just 24 hours after they've been filled up. And it's not just because of shortages here, there, and everywhere. It's because people are going to say, if I can buy some, let's just say ragu spaghetti sauce, just to pick something randomly that I choose, might as well get 3. So they're going to run out. And you're going to see rationing. You're going to see store managers say 1 item for that. And there's going to be a basket at the checkout line. Put those other 2 ragus in the basket. They're going to go back to the shelf. And it'll be for a lot of different things. Rationing within the supermarkets. Okay, here's something that I expect to happen. Well, let me get to price. The prices are not going to stop going up. I had a chart in my April report of the egg price, and I believe it had close to triple in just a few months. I monitor 2 things in my own life, actually 3 things. A 2-liter carton of milk, a 2-liter carton of orange juice, and they don't do dozens here. It's 15 eggs. And I've noticed it's about a 15 to 20% price increase in 2 years. I think a lot of places in the United States would be happy to see that. I had a buddy, I have a buddy in Los Angeles, and we talk once in a while. It's like a big data dump. What's going on? What's going on? And he said in Los Angeles, the price of food has doubled in the last several months. Double. I said, is that the price, or is it taxes, or is it something? They said, it's the end price that you see, like for butter, bread, milk, spaghetti, ice cream, you name it. Everything is double, which is a lot worse than what I see where I am. As I said, 15 to 20%. And here's another little factor. The local currency here is down 15% in the last 2 years, which is, it's damaging for when I need to buy something like a car part imported. It's damaging if I need to buy, say, some cleanser from an American conglomerate. But the rest I don't really care about. Of course, I care about friends of the family who are struggling to make ends meet and can't buy as much food. I get some complaints for my dependents on the price of food. We looked at we looked at a long Walmart bill, and I asked her, okay, I see like it's $190 now, and you do this every Monday or Tuesday. Okay, I said, what is this, a regular weekly thing? Yes. And is it like a regular weekly list of items? Yeah, it's pretty standard. It's not exact, but pretty standard. Okay, it's $190 here. What is it usually? Like several months ago? Oh, $150. Okay, so $150 to $190 that's not a small amount. So my markers of milk, juice, and eggs might not be a really good, what we call an indicator, representative. But then again, I think she might have been playing me to get a little more on the allowance. And I always challenge her. Anyway, she's a sweetheart. And she's really doing great work and taking cooking courses. And she's so nice and sweet and bright. She lights up my life. What can I say? I'm just a goomba about to turn 70. Food prices are not going to stop, Holly. I don't know if your mic is turned off. I cannot hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. I expect that if the slaughter of chickens continues at the pace we're seeing, we're going to see eggs double even again in price. We need to stop this because I'm not too sure the justification for slaughter of chickens is all that clear. I'm hearing that they're using an invalid test, which was invalidated a long time ago. And my joke is, yeah, I'm sick. I just got tested positive for human.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You better euthanize me because I just got tested positive for human.
Yep.
Okay.